My name is Sarah, and I'm 34 years old. What was supposed to be a simple backyard celebration for my brother's 5th wedding anniversary turned into the night everything exploded. As I stepped into the yard in Portland surrounded by family I hadn't seen in years, my stepmother walked right up to me with that fake smile plastered on her face. "You look beautiful today," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness while her eyes scanned me like prey. My family had no idea she had slipped something into my water glass just moments before, right there on the table amid the chatter and clinking plates. She thought she was clever, positioning it perfectly so I'd grab it during the toasts. But I knew. 6 months of watching her every move had led to this, my plan to end her game once and for all. Then my sister-in-law leaned in close, her whisper cutting through the laughter. "She's done it. I saw her tamper with your drink. Be careful." My heart raced, but I stayed cool, playing along as the party buzzed around us. Just 15 minutes later, the entire crowd went insane. Accusations flying, screams echoing, and her perfect world crumbling right in front of everyone. Before I get to my story, I want to know what time and what city you are listening in. I am happy to know how far my story has spread. As I pulled away from Dad's hug and scanned the yard, the familiar tension hit me again, pulling my mind straight back to 6 months earlier, when the first real cracks started showing. It began with Dad's calls. They used to come every week full of updates about his garden or the latest book he was reading, but suddenly they dropped off. When I did hear from him, his voice sounded distant, like he was reading from a script. "Everything's fine here, Sarah," he'd say, cutting conversation short. I pushed for details, but he brushed it off with excuses about being busy with Heather's latest project. Something felt off, deeper than the usual distance she'd always created between us. I couldn't shake it, so I decided to dig. Living in Seattle gave me the space to act without tipping anyone off. I looked up private investigators online, the kind licensed in Oregon for discreet work. After a few calls, I hired one named Mark, a no-nonsense guy with 20 years in family cases. It cost me $2,000 up front, but I figured it was worth it to understand why Dad was pulling away. Mark started with basic checks. He pulled public records on Heather first. That's when the first shock hit. Turns out, before she met Dad, Heather had a record from her previous marriage. 8 years back in California, she'd been charged with attempted murder on her ex-husband. The details were sparse but damning. She'd mixed sleep aid into his evening tea strong enough to knock him out cold for hours. He survived, but the intent was clear. Prosecutors argued it was to cover up embezzlement from their joint accounts. She got off with probation after claiming it was an accident, but the court documents painted her as calculating someone who used everyday items to manipulate outcomes. Mark sent me the PACER files, those federal court records anyone can access for a fee. Reading them made my stomach turn. This wasn't just passive-aggressive behavior anymore. It was a pattern. From there, Mark went deeper. He set up surveillance on their routines, nothing invasive, just tailing her car and noting patterns. Heather worked as a freelance marketer from home, handling small business campaigns, but her schedule included odd trips to the bank and meetings with a lawyer downtown. Mark tapped into public phone records and cross-referenced emails through a legal subpoena service he partnered with. What came back was worse. Heather had been emailing Dad's attorney, the same one she'd recommended years ago, about updating his will. The drafts she attached left Joshua and me out entirely, redirecting everything to her, the house savings, even the family necklace passed down from Mom. One email chain showed her pressuring the lawyer with concerns about our reliability, calling me ungrateful and absent, and Joshua too focused on his own life. It was all there, time-stamped over months, building a case to paint us as unworthy heirs. But the real smoking gun came 2 weeks into the investigation. Mark had a contact in property management who owed him a favor. They got access to the guest room Heather used for storage during one of her errands. Hidden in a locked drawer, they found a bottle of over-the-counter sleep aid, the kind you can buy at any pharmacy but with notes scribbled on the label dosages, effects like drowsiness and confusion, and a circled date. The anniversary party. Tucked beside it was a printed calendar page marked with Sarah's visit. Handle quietly. Mark's report concluded she was planning to target me specifically, using the chaos of the family gathering to make me look unstable, maybe slip the mix into a drink to cause a scene that would discredit me in Dad's eyes forever. This ties back to the will, he wrote. She's eliminating threats one by one. That night, staring at the photos Mark emailed, rage boiled up inside me. All those years of her subtle digs, the missing earrings, the slashed tire I blamed on bad luck, the whispers to Dad about how I never visited enough. It wasn't random. It was systematic. And now I had proof she was escalating to something dangerous. But instead of confronting her right then, which would alert Dad and let her spin it, I channeled it into resolve. If she wanted to play this game, I'd beat her at it. That's when the plan took shape. Gather everything, bait her into acting, and expose it all at the one place she couldn't hide. The party. Shaking off the memory, I forced a smile as Amanda handed me a plate from the grill. I took the plate from Amanda and settled into a chair near the edge of the table, the smell of grilled burgers mixing with the summer air, but my focus stayed sharp on Heather across the way. Right after Mark's report landed in my inbox, I didn't waste time. The evidence was solid, but confronting Dad would just make Heather twist it into another story about my paranoia. Instead, I built the trap step by step, starting with the bait to draw her out. First, I crafted the fake vulnerability. I sent an email to Heather directly copying Dad to make it seem casual. "Hey, excited for Joshua's anniversary next month," I wrote. "I've been thinking a lot about family lately, and I plan to announce something big at the party, about stepping back from any inheritance stuff to keep things fair." It was vague enough to hook her without raising alarms, but pointed straight at the will drafts Mark had uncovered. I hit send from my work account, timing it for a Friday evening when she'd be home alone. Her reply came quick. "That's generous of you, Sarah. Looking forward to it." I could almost hear the calculation in her words. To make the bait irresistible, I layered in the necklace detail. During one of our rare calls with Dad, I brought it up casually. "Remember that family necklace you gave Joshua for their wedding 5 years ago? It's such a beautiful piece from Mom's side." Dad lit up, telling the story again about how it had been in the family for generations, worth a few $1,000s at least. Heather jumped in fast. "Yes, such a treasure. Shame it's not with someone who appreciates it fully." Her tone was light, but Mark had already flagged her searches online for similar antiques. She was obsessed, seeing it as a symbol of what she could never claim. By dangling the idea that I might influence its future, I knew it'd push her to act before the party, to neutralize me while everyone was watching. Next came the technical setup. I couldn't rely on chance, so I prepped the tools myself. For the camera, I slipped my old phone into a side pocket of my purse, propping it at an angle to catch the table without drawing eyes. It was set to record video and audio silently, battery fully charged, and linked to my cloud for backup. The micro was simpler. A small clip-on device I'd bought online, disguised as a brooch on my dress, picking up conversations within 10 feet. I tested it all in Seattle, running simulations of the party layout based on photos Dad had sent. Amanda was my backup witness. I called her the week after Mark's report. "I need your help with something serious," I told her. She hesitated at first. She'd always been polite to Heather. But after I shared the basics about the will emails, her voice hardened. "I've suspected her for years. Count me in." We agreed she'd position herself near the kitchen, eyes on the drinks, ready to confirm anything suspicious. The psychological warfare was the final piece. I ramped up the pressure subtly. A week before the party, I left a voicemail for Heather. "Can't wait to see you all. It'll be a fresh start." It was innocent on the surface, but paired with the email, it screamed vulnerability to someone like her. Mark kept tabs too, noting her increased calls to the lawyer and a pharmacy run for more sleep aid. She was cornering herself, convinced I was handing her the win on a platter. By the time the invitations went out, everything was in place. The 3 steps were locked: bait her into desperation, record the move, then counter with the full exposure. I felt a cold determination settle in. This wasn't just about protecting Dad anymore. It was about dismantling the lies she'd built around us. We started eating then, the conversation turning to old stories as forks clinked against plates. The old stories wrapped up with laughter, and we shifted to lighter topics as plates cleared. But Heather's eyes kept flicking toward me, her posture stiffening with every passing minute. She'd bought the bait completely. Mark's final update a few days before the party confirmed it. Her calls to the lawyer spiked after my email, and she'd stocked up on that sleep aid again. In her mind, I was the loose end, the one who could unravel her hold on Dad with a single conversation about the will. By announcing I'd step back, I had her thinking the path was clear, but it only made her desperate to seal the deal tonight in front of witnesses who could vouch for my instability. She leaned toward the friend she'd brought along, a former colleague from her marketing days named Lisa, who was helping with the setup. "Keep an eye on the drinks," Heather murmured low enough that only Lisa caught it. I didn't hear the words, but the camera in my purse did, capturing the exchange as clearly as daylight. Overconfidence took over from there. Heather waited for the perfect distraction. Joshua and Amanda recounting their honeymoon mishaps, everyone leaning in with chuckles about a rained-out beach day. She slipped her hand into her purse, pulling out a small vial, the same type of over-the-counter sleep aid Mark had photographed. With Lisa blocking the view from the grill, Heather reached across the table, her fingers brushing the pitcher of lemonade. She poured a glass for me, twisting the vial open under the tablecloth and dumping the contents in quick. A measured dose meant to hit fast, causing drowsiness and slurred words within minutes. "Here, Sarah, you must be thirsty after your trip," she said, sliding it my way with that practiced smile, the one she used to charm Dad. The liquid swirled innocently, but I knew exactly what she'd done. The micro on my brooch picked up the faint clink of the vial against her keys, and the phone recorded her glance around to ensure no one noticed. False security washed over her face as she sat back, sipping her own water, convinced she'd pulled it off without a hitch. Lisa nodded subtly, playing her part in whatever cover Heather had planned. Heather even turned to Dad, touching his arm lightly. "Isn't it great having everyone together like this?" she asked, her voice steady, but underneath it was all calculation. One slip, and I'd be the one stumbling through toasts, looking unreliable enough to sway any doubts about the will. She figured the family would side with her version, the caring wife watching her stepdaughter overdo it on travel stress. Amanda caught it all from her spot by the kitchen door, where she'd positioned herself just as we planned. She edged closer during the honeymoon tale, her eyes locked on Heather's movements. As the laughter died down, she slid next to me, her voice a hushed, urgent whisper. "It's done. She tampered with your lemonade just like we thought. Stick to the plan." Her words sent a quick jolt through me, but I nodded, barely keeping my expression neutral. Amanda had seen the vial too, her vantage point perfect for confirming without drawing attention. She'd been reluctant at first, but now her resolve matched mine. Heather had tried the same subtle sabotage on her, once spreading rumors about Amanda's ungrateful attitude after a family gift mix-up. I stayed calm, picking at my food to buy time. When Heather brought up my recent promotion at work, her tone shifted to that familiar edge. "Congrats on the job advancement, Sarah. Though it must leave little room for family, right? All that corporate grind." It was her usual jab, implying I was too self-absorbed to care, but tonight it landed flat. I met her gaze evenly. "Work keeps me busy, but moments like this remind me what's important." The irony burned inside. She had no idea how right I was, or that every word was being captured, building the case against her. Dad chimed in, obliviously praising my career, but Heather's smile tightened, her fingers drumming the table near my glass. The distraction ended, and eyes turned back to the group, but the air felt thicker now, charged with what was coming. Dad stood up from his chair, glass in hand, signaling the start of the toasts as the group quieted down around the table. I moved into the counterstrike without hesitation, sticking to the third step of the plan: make her pay for her own trap. The timing was everything. With the camera rolling and the micro active, I needed the swap to look accidental. As Dad cleared his throat to speak, I reached for my napkin, deliberately letting it flutter to the ground near the edge of the table. "Oops, sorry," I muttered, bending down to grab it while everyone focused on him. In that split second, I bumped my hip against the leg of the table just hard enough to jostle the glasses without spilling. My lemonade switched places with Heather's water seamlessly, the similar clear liquids and ice cubes masking the move. Amanda caught my eye from across the way, giving a subtle nod to confirm she'd seen it all, her role as witness locked in. Dad raised his glass higher, his voice warm and steady. "To Joshua and Amanda, 5 years of building a life together through the ups and downs. You've made me proud." The words hung in the air, pulling smiles from the faces around us, including Heather's, who lifted her glass, now mine, with a satisfied glint. She took a long sip, believing it was still safe, her plan unfolding just as she'd envisioned. The multiple angles covered everything. The phone in my purse caught the overhead view of the switch. The brooch micro recorded the clink of glass on glass, and Amanda's position added the human confirmation if needed. It was airtight, every piece feeding into the exposure to come. Heather set her glass down, engaging in the toast with a quick "here, here," her posture relaxing for the first time that evening. She turned to Joshua, complimenting Amanda on her dress, acting every bit the gracious host. Minutes passed with small talk about the couple's future plans, and she seemed fine at first. No rush, no signs. Then it started subtly. She rubbed her temple with one hand, the other gripping the arm of her chair as if a headache had crept in from nowhere. Amanda noticed right away and leaned forward. "Everything okay over there?" she asked, her tone casual but probing. Heather's response came slower than usual, the words blending at the edges. "Yes, just a bit warm out here, that's all." But her eyes didn't focus quite right, darting between faces without landing. The drowsiness built from there. Heather tried to laugh at a joke Joshua made about their early marriage days, but it came out muffled, her lips not forming the sounds sharply. She reached for her glass again, the one with the mix, and took another pull, unaware it was sealing her fate. Dad frowned, setting his own drink aside. "You don't look yourself, Heather. Need some water." The irony twisted inside me, but I kept still, watching it play out exactly as the plan predicted. The sleep aid was hitting her system, the effects Mark had described from her past case notes. Confusion creeping and coordination slipping away. She attempted to stand, then murmuring something about checking the dessert from the kitchen, but her legs wobbled under her, forcing her to grab the table edge for balance. The crowd, aunts, uncles, a few cousins scattered around the yard, started to murmur, heads turning as her sway caught their attention. "Whoa, careful there," one uncle said, half rising from his seat. Heather waved him off, but her hand trembled, and she slumped back down, her face flushing unevenly. "I'm fine, really, just stood up too fast." The slurring was unmistakable now, turning her denial into something unconvincing, almost comical if it weren't so damning. I sat there, arms crossed loosely, thinking exactly as planned. She was dismantling herself, the evidence stacking up in real time. The Shisao grew louder, whispers rippling through the group about whether she was feeling ill or if it was the heat. Heather's gaze finally locked on me, narrowing with a flicker of realization amid the fog. That narrowing gaze sharpened into suspicion, Heather's foggy mind piecing together the pieces as she pointed a shaky finger across the table. You switched them." She slurred, her voice rising unevenly, cutting through the murmurs like a dull knife. The crowd fell silent, forks pausing midair, all eyes snapping to her. Joshua set his plate down hard, confusion etching his face. "Switched what, Heather? What's going on?" Dad leaned forward, his brow furrowed in worry, but she ignored him, her finger still aimed at me. The glasses. That lemonade was for her. I put something in it to make her look foolish, to show everyone she's the problem, always stirring up trouble about the inheritance. The words tumbled out, her inhibitions crumbling under the drowsiness, each one landing like a bomb in the quiet yard. I didn't flinch, pulling out my phone from my purse with steady hands. "No need to guess," I said evenly, tapping the screen to play the footage. The video from the hidden phone started rolling on speaker. Clear shots of her slipping the vial into the pitcher, the quick pour, her glance around to check for watchers. Gasps rippled through the group as aunts clutched their pearls and cousins whipped out their own phones to record. The micro audio synced up perfectly, capturing her murmur to Lisa, "Keep an eye on the drinks." Heather's color drained, her mouth opening and closing without sound as the truth played out for everyone. Dad's face went pale, his glass slipping from his grip to the table with a thud. "Heather, what did you do? You put something in Sarah's drink." His voice cracked, the betrayal hitting him square. She tried to backpedal, waving her hands weakly. "It was just to loosen her up, make her slip up in front of you all. She's been against me from the start, trying to turn you against us." But the drowsiness made her ramble, admitting more. "The will? I had to protect what's mine after all she's done to undermine it." Joshua stood up abruptly, his chair scraping back. "Protect? You mean steal? This is insane." Amanda nodded beside him, her expression steely. "I saw it happen. The whole thing from the kitchen. She tampered with it right there." The evidence didn't stop at the video. I switched to the next clip, the one Mark had prepped from his investigation. "This isn't the first time," I explained, holding the phone so Dad could see. Court records scrolled on screen. The California case file, probation details for attempted murder on her ex, the sleep aid mix in his tea to cover financial fraud. She did this before Dad. Mark, the investigator I hired, pulled these. Public records, all verifiable. The crowd erupted, then voices overlapping in shock. "Is that true?" From an uncle. "Call the police?" From a cousin. Phones were out everywhere, capturing the chaos, the insane unraveling Heather had triggered. Heather slumped further, her attempts to deny falling flat. "That's old news, Twisted. I never meant real harm." But Lisa, her so-called ally, shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eyes. Amanda pressed her. "You were in on it, weren't you, covering for her tamper?" Lisa stammered. I didn't know the details." But it was too late. The confirmation from a witness sealed it. Mark had even sent a quick text earlier that day, ready to testify if needed, his report attached with timestamps on her pharmacy buys and lawyer emails. The digital trail was overwhelming: drafts of the will excluding U.S. transfers of $50,000 from Dad's accounts to hers under false pretenses. I didn't need to say more. The phone displayed it all, the fraud history from her marketing days spilling out. Fired for embezzling client funds, confirmed by old colleagues Mark had quietly reached. Heather was helpless now, her body sagging as the effects peaked, words slurring into incoherence. "You set me up." "How?" she managed, but no one answered, the yard buzzing with calls to 911. Dad pulled out his phone, dialing emergency services with trembling fingers. "Yes, family party in Portland. My wife, she's not well, possible medical issue." Oregon EMS responded fast, sirens approaching within 10 minutes, paramedics pushing through the gate with a stretcher. They checked her vitals, noting the drowsiness and confusion, loading her up as she mumbled denials. The police arrived right behind, badges flashing under the string lights. "We got reports of an incident," one officer said, notebook out. I handed over my phone immediately. "It's all here. Video records, everything. She tried to tamper with my drink." The officers took statements on the spot, starting with Amanda. "I witnessed the switch and the tamper. It was deliberate." She confirmed, her voice firm. Joshua added his piece, anger sharpening his tone. "She admitted it herself right in front of us." Dad stood to the side, shell-shocked, answering questions about their marriage and finances when asked. Heather, strapped in the ambulance, could only glare weakly as they wheeled her away, the crowd dispersing in stunned clusters, still filming the aftermath. One officer turned to me last. "We'll need that phone for evidence, ma'am." I nodded, backing it up to the cloud first. The avalanche had begun, and there was no turning back. I watched the officers bag my phone for processing the weight of the night settling in as the ambulance lights faded down the street. The charges came together fast once the evidence hit the station. Heather woke up clearer in the hospital ER, but the paramedics had already noted the drowsiness as suspicious, drawing blood for a tox screen that confirmed the sleep aid overdose in her system. Oregon law doesn't mess around with intent to harm at family events. By morning, prosecutors filed 3 counts: assault with a deadly weapon, the mix enhanced by her prior attempted murder conviction, fraud for the forged will drafts, and unauthorized transfers and attempted theft for the necklace searches Mark documented in Joshua's home. The prior record from California sealed it. Her probation violation alone added years. The judge denied bail at the arraignment 2 days later, citing flight risk. Her marketing contacts scattered quick after the news broke. Sentencing hit 25 years minimum with no parole until 10, factoring in the premeditation from the vile notes and emails. She stood in court, pale and silent. No tears, just a hard stare at the bench as the gavel fell. Financially, it unraveled her completely. Dad's lawyer, the one she'd pressured, turned over everything under subpoena. The will drafts, bank statements showing $50,000 siphoned to her accounts for business expenses. The prenup he'd signed years back held firm, protecting the house and main assets, but she fought dirty in the divorce filing, claiming emotional duress. The judge saw through it, awarding her nothing beyond a one-time settlement of $20,000 to cover basics minus court fees. She had to repay the transfers with interest, leaving her accounts frozen and liens on any property. Mark's report helped there too, tracing her old fraud from the marketing firm where she'd skimmed client funds for personal trips. By the end, she was bankrupt. Her freelance gigs dried up as word spread through industry networks. No more consulting gigs. She sold her car just to pay the first restitution installment. Socially, the exposure hit like a storm. Local Portland news picked it up quick. Headlines screaming, "Stepmom's poison plot unravels at anniversary bash," across the Oregonian and Cat2 channels, with blurry crowd videos going viral on social media. Neighbors who'd waved at her barbecues now crossed the street. Her old friend Lisa testified in exchange for immunity, spilling how Heather had roped her into watching drinks without full details. The family side scattered. No more invites to holidays, no sympathetic calls. Even mutual acquaintances from Dad's circle cut ties, whispering about the gold digger who almost got away with it. She ended up isolated in a rundown apartment on the city's edge, scraping by on public assistance, while appeals dragged on her reputation, shredded beyond repair. For me, the triumph felt hollow at first. We got the will revoked the next week, restoring Joshua and me as heirs, the necklace safe in his safe. Dad tried calling daily after the hospital, his voicemails full of apologies. "I was blind, Sarah. How could I let this happen? But I let them go unanswered. You chose her over us for years," I told him once when he showed up at my hotel unannounced. "Blind isn't an excuse. It's what cost us Mom's memory and our trust." He looked broken, nodding without fight, but I couldn't bridge it. Joshua felt the same. He packed up Amanda and left for a week-long drive, refusing Dad's invites to talk. "She nearly poisoned our family," he said on our call. "How do we fix that?" We didn't. The rift stayed, visits to Portland off the table for good. I headed back to Seattle the day after the arraignment, packing light and focusing on work to rebuild. The plan had worked. Her schemes exposed, justice served. But it came at a cost. Dad retreated to the house alone, selling off extras to cover legal bills, his once vibrant calls now sparse and awkward. Joshua threw himself into his job, the anniversary tainted forever. Heather faded into obscurity, her letters from jail returned unopened, no second chances left. Looking back, revenge demanded sacrifice, family ties, severed trust, shattered. But trusting my gut saved us from worse. It taught me boundaries aren't optional. Once crossed, some doors stay locked for good. The yard lights dimmed that night, but the shadows lingered long after,